Extraterrestrial highway, they have always walked amongst us. Sky people. Brinsley Lepore Trench, author of a series of books proposing esoteric theories about everything from space visitors to the Earth's historical hidden history, held that the sky people, called the Elohim in the Old Testament, created animal or Adamic man, otherwise known as the present human race. The creation occurred via what would now be called advanced genetic engineering, and it was done by a renegade band of Elohim called the Jehovah. Knowing that their experiment was an unauthorized one, removed their creation to an obscure location, what the Bible called the Garden of Eden, located on Mars. In due course, another extraterrestrial race, known as the Serpent People, learned of the garden and wanted to visit it, curious about the experiments that had created woman. The Serpent People, upon visiting the innocent inhabitants of the garden, gave them wisdom and scientific knowledge, and they also introduced them to sexual intercourse and reproduction. Many of the Adamic women bore children sired by the serpent race. The Jehovah were incredibly furious when they found out about the Serpent People's interference, but it was too late for them to continue their domination of Adamic man. The individual Jehovah most responsible for the experiment was named Noah, and was driven from Mars with his creations. He flew back to Earth in a spaceship, Noah's Ark, and populated the Earth. According to Trench, all human conflict stems from mankind's dual nature. Only if we achieve total consciousness, in which both the superior serpent heritage and the animal nature are integrated, can we claim our place as wise, peaceful citizens of the galaxy and beyond. In the alternative reality proposed in the influential 19th century theosophical writings of Helena Petronova Blavatsky, the world has seen 5 root races, each with its own 7 sub-races, and these latter with their own branch races. Blavatsky wrote that 2 more root races will come before the human race finishes its remarkable evolution. The first root race of fire mist folk lived near the North Pole, in the imperishable sacred land. They were invisible. The second root race were astral beings on their way to becoming material and visible, also living in the polar region. They occupied a more or less material continent known as Hyperborea, where they learned how to reproduce sexually. The third root race were ape-like in appearance with characteristics of both sexes. Some had 4 arms, and unusually some had an eye in the back of their heads. These beings lived on the now lost Pacific continent of Lemuria. By the time the 4th root race dwelling on the now lost city of Atlantis appeared on Earth, the present human form had developed. Humans in our present form represent the 5th root race. In the relatively near future, the 6th root race will replace humans altogether. After the 7th root race has risen and fallen, a new cycle of civilizations will begin on the outer rim planet of Mercury. Blavatsky claimed as her source for these revolutionaries an archaic manuscript. Collection of palm leaves made impermeable to water, fire, and air by some specific unknown process. On the first page is an immaculate white disc with a dull black ground. On the following page, the same disc but with a central point. These stanzas of Zion recorded the hidden history of the cosmos and all of its inhabitants, including the human race. Other scholars, however, contend that Blavatsky drew on contemporary scientific and occult literature and embellished it considerably, though not quite beyond recognition. In occult speculation, the 4th dimension is a parallel universe that occupies the same space as ours, but at a different vibrational level. Though its existence has never been demonstrated scientifically, it has been used to explain a variety of ostensibly mysterious phenomena, including disappearance in the mysterious Bermuda Triangle, teleportation, clairvoyance, ghostly apparitions, monsters, unidentified flying objects, to name but a few. The concept came into the vocabulary of occultism through the well-known Leipzig astronomer Johann Zollinger, a gifted student of Theosophy. In the 1870s, Zollinger worked with American medium Henry Slade, who claimed the ability to materialize or teleport objects during seances. As Zollinger saw it, such talents indicated that the mediums can move things out of our visual dimension into the fourth and then back again. Unfortunately for Zollinger's hypothetical theory, Slade later confessed that he produced the effects fraudulently to deceive. Later paranormal researchers, however, used variants of the fourth dimensional idea to explain the fate of our human soul after death. Contactees are people who claim a regular, ongoing relationship with benevolent extraterrestrials, sometimes called space brothers. These aliens, essentially angels in spacesuits, are nearly always human in appearance, except better looking than humans are. They espouse an occult philosophy with recognizable terrestrial origins, notably in Theosophy. Contact occurs in a vast variety of methods and fashions. Much, perhaps most of it though, is through psychic channeling. Other psychic communications are effected through automatic writing, dreams, visions, or astral out-of-body travel. A third group, the most controversial, alleges physical contact, including trips in flying saucers or craft to other worlds. Physical contactees frequently offer evidence of their experiences in the form of artifacts, video footage, or photographs. Persons who follow contactees and embrace their message are sometimes called Sorcereans. The contactee movement overlaps to a degree with the UFO movement, ufology, but the two differs in fundamental ways. To Sorcereans, believe there are no unidentified flying objects, only real flying saucers in nature, origin, and their purpose are known. They are here to educate humans to their larger cosmic destiny, to prepare them for the coming Earth changes generated by nuclear war, geological upheavals, polar shifts, or combinations thereof. To ufologists, UFOs are unknowns, probably of extraordinary origin, but fundamentally a phenomenon that will eventually yield its fantastic secrets to science via conventional investigative and analytical procedures. Another way to express the difference is to see Sorcereans as a kind of popular religious movement, ufology as popular, if often naive, attempt at scientific inquiry. Traditionally, some skeptical ufologists have functioned as the contactee movement's fiercest critics. The contactee movement envisions a densely populated cosmos with hosts of advanced, wise space people linked in a kind of celestial United Nations, usually called the Galactic Federation. It is thought a minority of evil extraterrestrials opposes the Federation's benevolent mission. Both sides have representatives here on Earth, individuals who pass as normal Earthlings but who are in fact aliens from off-world planets. Many were placed here generations ago and have lived on this planet through many incarnations, patiently waiting to be activated when the time of transition, which will include mass landings of spaceships and motherships in the Earth orbit. There were contactees here before there were reported flying saucers. Perhaps the first of them was the Swedish scientist and mystic Emanuel Swedenborg. Emanuel became famous for his publication Earths in the Solar World. Swedenborg first wrote of his astral travels to the moon and other planetary bodies. Each of these worlds, Swedenborg asserted, is inhabited, and he described at length the people and civilizations who live there. In the 19th century, with the rise of the spiritualist movement, psychic communications with extraterrestrials, most often Martians, were recorded on numerous occasions. The most famous case became the subject of a pioneering book in the emerging discipline of abnormal psychology. Theodore Flournoy. From India to the planet Mars in various states of altered consciousness, a woman given the pseudonym Helen Smith, also known as Catherine Elise Muller, interacted with persons from the Red Planet, which she also visited astrally. She produced a Martian language that Flournoy identified as an infantile travesty of French. Flournoy, 1963. Reflecting a belief popularized by American astronomer Percival Lowell and Smith Muller, they saw multiple canals on the Martian surface using powerful telescopes of the day. Her story, like those of Swedenborg and the contactees of the Saucer era, mirrored astronomical and other scientific theories of this important period. Within a few years, the notion of Martian canal system would be thoroughly investigated and debunked. In the late 1940s and into the 1950s, it was still vaguely possible, some astronomers thought, that some neighbouring planets, most likely Mars and Venus, could harbour intelligent extraterrestrial life. Perhaps not surprisingly, the aliens in contact more often hailed from our immediate vicinity, after space probes in the 1960s established beyond further rational discussion that beyond Earth there are no planets hospitable to life in this system. The extraterrestrials in contact claims were placed farther out in the cosmos, either that or the Venus, Mars, Saturn, and other solar planets said to harbour advanced civilizations became etheric counterparts existing on a higher vibratory rate and distinct from the lifeless worlds we know. A spiritual Bible, the product of automatic writing at the guidance of angels, or so New York occultist John Ballou Newbrough asserted, written between January and December of 1881. The book is a mystical account of the cosmos, its history, and of course its inhabitants. The book stayed in print for decades and was widely read in contactee circles and groups where Ashtar guardian angels who fly spirit ships became extraterrestrials in spacecraft. Indeed, the ubiquitous starship commander and channeling entity Ashtar may owe his name and occupation to Newbrough's creation. Helena Petronova Blavatsky, 1891, who founded the Theosophy, wrote of a hierarchy of ascended masters, including the Venus-based Lords of the Flame. In the 1930s, the flamboyant fascist-orientated Guy Warren Ballard marketed a simplified popular version of Blavatsky's doctrine. He spoke of his own meeting with 12 Venetian masters in the Teton Mountains in Wyoming. Religious studies scholar J. Gordon Melton identifies Ballard, who died in 1939, and his I Am movement as crucial to the development of the later extraterrestrial contactee movement. Not only did Ballard become the first to actually build a religion on contact with extraterrestrials, he writes, but his emphasis was placed upon frequent contact with the masters from whom he received regular messages to the followers of the World Contactee movement. The movement took over the I Am spiritual hierarchy. In the Book of the Damned, 1919, the first volume ever written on the subject that would eventually be called Ufology, Charles Fort speculated that strange lights and constructions observed in the sky and space during the previous century could be evidence of visitation from other worlds. He also advanced the nearly possibly tongue-in-cheek speculation that perhaps some human beings were secretly in contact with the occupants of such space vehicles. The first explicit contact in the context of a UFO sighting occurred on the evening of October the 9th, 1946, over San Diego. Many residents had gone outside in anticipation of a spectacular predicted meteor shower. Among them was medium Mark Probert, who channeled cosmic philosophy. He worked with occult theorists who the year before had founded Borderland Sciences Research Associates. Probert and many others witnessed something that, whatever else it may or may not have been, was not a meteor. Observers would describe it as resembling a huge bullet-shaped object with bat-like wings and a searchlight that had occasionally swept over the ground. Dark, except for two red lights along its side, it stayed in view for an hour and a half, moving at both slow and fast speeds. During the sighting, Probert phoned Ley, who urged him to see if the craft's occupants were interested in a telepathic exchange. According to Probert, the experiment was highly successful and succeeded. The crew members revealed themselves as peaceful people with lightweight illuminated bodies. They had been trying to contact Earthlings for many years. Though they were afraid to land openly, they would meet with scientists in some safe, isolated area or on a secluded mountaintop. They had mastered anti-gravity flight and their ship was called the Carita. The San Diego Union publication carried a humorous piece on the sighting, including Probert's assertions in its October 18th issue. The UFO age began the next year with private pilot Kenneth Arnold's June 24, 1947 sighting of 9 shiny objects that the press would soon call flying saucers. Many other people came forward to recount their own encounters with unknown aerial phenomena. Among the most outlandish claims was one told by Ole J. Snide. In a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle appearing in the July 3rd issue, Snide stated that the flying discs, also known as flying saucers, were spaceships from other planets. This is one of the very earliest public attempts to link the new public sensation with extraterrestrial visitors. Nearly all other speculation held the saucers to be natural phenomena or advanced terrestrial aircraft. The association of flying saucers as spaceships did not take a widespread hold until the early 1950s. Snide also said the saucer had a base on the far side of the moon, also known as the dark side of the moon. He knew as much because he regularly teleported himself around the galaxy. A follow-up article in the Chronicle determined that Snide, a student of occultism, was very serious about this subject. Though nothing more is known about Snide, he may have been something of a contactee, before the word and concept had come into public circulation. The contact movement, however, did not emerge into cultural visibility until January 1952, when aircraft mechanic George W. Van Tassel began holding open weekly meetings in the high desert country of Southern California. All these gatherings Van Tassel would channel messages from star-shipped Venetia commanders introducing among others the destined to be ubiquitous Ashtar. That same year Van Tassel published I Rode a Flying Saucer, the first modern contactee book, albeit with a misleading title. It would not be until the next year that Van Tassel would have his first physical contact and spaceship boarding. The year 1952 saw a flurry of busy contact activity. In Prescott, Arizona, George Hunt Williamson, his wife Betty, and companions were communicating with Martians, Uranians, and other extraterrestrials from the solar system via a Ouija board. Radio and mental telepathy in July in the Nevada desert. Truman Bethune met the crew of a scow from the planet Clarion, invisible to earthly eyes because it is always on the opposite side of the sun from the Earth out of view. Though arguably Van Tassel was the most influential of the first generation of contactees, the most famous was George Adamski. He had a long history in California going back to the 1930s as a kind of minor ufological guru. When flying saucers rose to prominence in the late 1940s, Adamski produced photographs to the public of spaceships in the atmosphere near the moon. On November the 20th, 1952, accompanied by 6 associates, including George Hunt Williamson, he went out into the desert to meet a landed saucer and its pilot, a blonde-haired, angelic figure whom Adamski would call Orphon. Adamski went on to write books, lecture all over the world, and become the single most controversial saucer personality of the 1950s. Though despised by conservative ufologists who charged that his accounts of meetings with Venetians and Martians amounted to fabrication and science fiction, he was also widely revered in August 1953, Later, more than 10,000 persons attended the Interplanetary Spacecraft Convention at Van Tassel's residence in Giant Rock, California. The speakers who attended were mostly the new, unknown contactee stars of the day. The movement was growing rapidly, becoming a worldwide sensation and phenomenon. It also produced a small library of books and newsletters. Incidentally, over the course of the next few years, other contactees rose to a cult status and became celebrities. Many were physical contactees, but in time, channelers and automatic writers, most of whom did not seek publicity or profit, dominated the ranks. Not everyone was willing to take the space people at their word. Channeling contactee Trevor James Constable warned that some of them were demons in disguise and could not be trusted. Some years later, occult-orientated ufologist John A. Keel wrote, "The demons, devils, and false angels were recognized as liars and plunderers by early man. These same impostors now appear as long-haired Venetians." Christian fundamentalist authors of UFO books expressed similar suspicions. Adamski's death in April 1965 marked the passing of the era of the physical contactees. Even so, the most successful contactee of later years was himself a physical contactee, Edward Billy Meyer, a rural Swiss man with a background in the esoteric. Like Adamski and his first-generation counterparts, Meyer put forth photographs, artifacts, and film footage, plus allegedly confirmation testimony to back up his stories and experiences of the in-the-flesh meetings with space people and of rides in their spacecraft. Meyer's extraterrestrials are from the Pleiades star constellation system, but like Adamski's Venusians, they are handsome and beautiful, with blonde hair and a generally northern European appearance, unlike Adamski and just about everybody else's space people. Meyers have a specific anti-religious message. According to Meyer, believing only in the laws of nature and well-being to mankind, it is also safe to say that unlike other contactees, Meyer, a keen businessman, has reaped a significant and continuing financial reward from his experiences. He has also been at the receiving end of criticism and debunking efforts. After divorcing him, his ex-wife told investigators that his claims were without factual basis. In the United States, a major force in the ufology movement has been the annual Rocky Mountain Conference on UFO Investigation, which has taken up where the Giant Rock Conventions, the last held in 1977, left off. Started in 1980 by R. Leo Sprinkle, a psychologist and counselor at the University of Wyoming, it meets once a year, usually in the summer, and attracts contactees from all over the world, though most are from ranches, farms, and small towns of the Great Plains, underscoring the folk or ground-level nature of the movement. Contactees are different from abductees, whose experiences became known only in the 1960s and did not become a major part of the UFO controversy until the 1980s in several ways. A principal difference is that abductees tend to fit the profile of ordinary citizens, in other words, people without a background in occultism. In that way, they are also like the most witnesses of UFOs. Abductees also report being taken against their will, and many consider the experience highly traumatic. Most do not aim to have attended superior wisdom from the experience, and most assert that their communications with their captors were devoid of messages of cosmic fulfillment. Yet in time, contactee-orientated writers and investigators began to see abductions as contacts by other important means. Some abductee come to accept their experiences as painful but necessary learning experiences. Harvard University John E. Mack, whose study of abduction reports has convinced him that extraterrestrials have benevolent intentions, and has stated, if, in fact, the alien beings are closer to the divine source or anima mundi than human beings generally seem to be, their presence among us, however cruel and traumatic in some instances, may be part of a larger process that is bringing us back to a more higher wisdom. Hybrid beings are entities who are part human and part humanoid. They figure in a number of accounts of UFO abductions. Female abductees sometimes report anomalous pregnancies that are ignatically terminated. typically in association with a missing time experience of the sort in which the abductions allegedly took place. In subsequent on-board UFO encounter, the aliens present the abductee with a child who has the features both of the human mother and of the abducting entities, most often described as the grey or white-skinned with oversized heads and large hypnotic eyes. As early as the late 1960s, paranormal writer John Keel, investigating reports of UFOs and other strange occurrences in New York City and on Long Island, noted that some female witnesses experienced what he called hysterical pregnancies. Keel's observations were little noted and soon forgotten. In the 1980s, however, abduction specialist Bud Hopkins independently came upon the same phenomenon. Mostly through the use of hypnosis, the woman recalled instances in which a kind of mechanical suction device removed fetuses from their wombs. In later abductions, the women would be shown babies, toddlers, and older children, and told to touch and interact with them in other ways as if their own. Though generally human in appearance, the children often appeared to be lacking the emotional makeup of human beings. In time, abductees also reported encounters with young adult hybrids. These hybrids, among those sufficiently human-looking to be unnoticed on the street, would sometimes have sexual relationships with younger abductees who may or may not have given their personal consent. Dr. David Jacobs, who has written extensively on the issue of hybrids, believes these particular beings are from a late stage of the process. His investigations lead him to believe that first-stage hybrids are half human, half alien. These entities tend to look and pass almost alien to the next stage. Jacob speculates the aliens join a human egg and sperm, assimilate genetic material from the first-stage hybrid into the zygote. The first-stage hybrid created from human sperm and egg and genetic material from a second-stage individual looks more human in appearance. Only in the latest stages, the fifth or sixth, do the hybrids resemble humans enough to walk among us and, just as important, reproduce. They retain the strong mental telepathic powers of the alien heritage. However, in Jacob's view, based on the testimony from abductees whom he has hypnotized, the aliens are preparing to replace the human race with a hybrid population. The aliens themselves are unable to reproduce, but through hybrids their species will survive at the expense of humanity. Jacob suggests that this takeover could occur at any time and is more likely to occur sooner rather than later in our evolution. Hybrids are a relatively new concept among ufologists, and the accounts of alleged UFO experience. In retrospect, some have suggested that the presence of human-like beings in early close encounters of the seventh kind suggests hybrids were being seen before they were being recognized. In a famous October 1957 Brazilian abduction case, a young man allegedly had sexual intercourse with an alien woman who were to have been reported in a more recent encounter will probably be judged a hybrid. Through hand gestures, the woman seemed to indicate that the fruit of their union would be born on separate off-world planets and not on Earth. On the other hand, critics point out hard evidence for the existence of hybrids simply does not exist. Most of the testimony to their presence owes, moreover, to accounts elicited under hypnosis, a state in which unconscious fantasizing frequently occurs. Scientific critics have stated flatly that hybridization procedures of the sort described are biologically impossible. Though there is no shortage of anecdotal testimony, no medically documented instances of anonymously terminated pregnancies have ever been demonstrated or openly reported. Time travelers. According to Bruce Goldberg, a Californian physician and a prolific writer on occult and metaphysical subjects, visitors from the future are here. He claims to have met several chromonauts, as he calls them. They are here, he says, to help us in our spiritual evolution, and they are not extraterrestrials, nor are they sophisticated agents responsible for UFO abductions. Time travel was or will be invented in the year 3050. The inventor, Tatos, was the god Hermes thousands of years ago in another past lifetime. Before Tatos travelled back to our time to talk with Dr. Goldberg, however, he helped send holographic images into our present reality. Goldberg writes that the chrononauts have mastered hyperspace travel between multiple dimensions and can move through walls and solid objects. By existing in the fifth dimension, they can observe us and remain invisible, as if viewing us on a highly advanced television set. Genetic manipulation of our chromo is a routine procedure for them. They have greatly speeded up our rate of evolution. While travelling in an out-of-body state through the fifth dimension, Goldberg encountered a 36th century man who calls himself Trakasa. Trakasa told him that many chrononauts are living quietly among humans, keeping out of the public eye, and even spending much of their time in literally invisible state. Trakasa eventually acknowledged to Goldberg that one purpose of his visit was to introduce Goldberg to Art Bell. Arthur William Bell was an American broadcaster and author. He was the founder and the original host of the paranormal-themed radio program Coast to Coast AM, which is syndicated on hundreds of radio stations in the United States and Canada. He also created and hosted its companion show Dreamland, which catered to enthusiasts of the esoteric. Goldberg then realized that spelled backwards, Traksa's name was Ask Art. Afterward, Goldberg appeared at least 9 times on Bell's popular program. In earlier lifetimes, he played big roles in both Atlantis and Lemuria. Nirev, 31st century, helped with the 19th century's Industrial Revolution, and Alisimo, 34th century, also remarkably tutored Leonardo da Piero da Vinci, more commonly known as Leonardo da Vinci, who was an Italian polymath of the Renaissance. Chatnoy, who is from the 50th century, is or will be one of the great pioneers of time travel. Chrononauts are highly spiritual people, Goldberg writes. They follow us from lifetime to lifetime, tracing our souls back to previous lives and monitoring our spiritual unfolding. The ultimate purpose is to facilitate the perfection of the human soul to allow for ascension and the end of karmic cycle. There are also future problems, wars, atmospheric pollution, infertility in this and connected parallel universes that they are trying to avert by assisting us now in our spiritual progress. Mark Davenport theories that UFOs are visitors from the future. In his view, these time machines are peopled by a complex mixture of human beings, evolved forms of humanoid beings, highly genetically engineered life forms, androids, robots, and other alien life forms. These occupants make use of highly advanced technology based on principles that will be discovered at some point in our near future to produce fields around their craft that warp space-time. By manipulating these fields, they are able to traverse what we would think of as space and time as well. Mark Davenport, however, does not claim to have seen any of these travellers himself.